Canada's golden crop is on the move. Once destined for Asia, especially China, canola is now heading in a new direction, straight into Europe's food system and energy transition. This isn't just a story about cooking oil, it's a case study in how agriculture becomes strategy, how crops become leverage, and how trade can redraw alliances. Today, we reveal why Canada's canola shift to Europe is reshaping global supply chains, and why the US can't stop it. Welcome to Geo Capitalist, where we decode global wealth one power shift at a time. In today's video, we'll uncover how a simple oilseed has turned into a geopolitical asset. Canada's pivot away from China and toward Europe is more than trade. It's a transformation with consequences for energy, agriculture, and diplomacy. If you want more insights like this, subscribe now. For years, China was Canada's top customer for canola seed, meal, and oil. At its peak, China purchased billions of dollars worth each year, feeding both its food industry and biofuel sector. That era is now over. Political tensions, from diplomatic disputes to security controversies, opened the door to tariffs and restrictions that effectively cut Canada out. Seed exports dropped to a fraction of their former levels. Canola meal, once a steady flow into Chinese feedlots, collapsed. And oil exports completely halted. China's message was clear. Canada's agriculture could no longer count on a stable market in Asia. This abrupt closure forced Ottawa and Canadian farmers to look elsewhere. The impact was immediate. Canola, once viewed as a commodity tied to a handful of buyers, suddenly became a crop in need of new allies. But here's the twist. This crisis created opportunity. The loss of China didn't sink Canadian farmers. Instead, it sparked a redirection toward regions more aligned with Canada's long-term interests. Europe, facing its own supply shortages and energy dilemmas, stepped in. For Canada, the pivot marked more than a trade adjustment. Europe's food system has been under pressure. The situation in Ukraine disrupted sunflower oil supplies, a staple for EU food processors. At the same time, global vegetable oil markets tightened, driving up prices. Canadian canola arrived just in time to fill the void. Shipments of canola seed to Europe surged dramatically. What was once a modest trade line is now measured in millions of tons annually, making the EU one of Canada's fastest-growing agricultural partners. Beyond volume, pricing dynamics gave Canada an advantage. Canola was trading at a significant discount to Europe's traditional rapeseed. That spread made Canadian supply not just convenient, but financially attractive. European refiners and food producers quickly recognized the benefits. Canola became a stable, reliable substitute for lost sunflower oil and a hedge against volatile global supplies. But this was more than a stopgap. Contracts, investments, and new supply arrangements indicate that Europe views Canadian canola as a long-term fixture in its food security strategy. Canola's value doesn't stop in the kitchen. It has become an essential input for renewable diesel and biofuels, a sector booming across Europe. With strict emissions targets and energy transition goals, the EU is racing to expand plant-based fuel capacity. New processing plants across the prairies are gearing up to crush millions of tons of seed annually, producing oil that feeds directly into biofuel refineries. These facilities, some of the largest in North America, position Canada as a strategic supplier for Europe's clean energy market. For Brussels, it's a win-win. Canadian canola supports both food security and climate policy. At the same time, the U.S. has become a less reliable buyer. Regulatory changes under the Clean Fuel Production Credit limit the eligibility of foreign feedstocks. squeezing Canadian oil out of American biofuel plants. This makes Europe even more attractive. With fewer trade barriers and higher demand, EU markets offer a stronger long-term home for Canadian exports. The rebranding of canola from cooking oil to energy input is critical. To meet Europe's rising demand, Canada is overhauling its agricultural infrastructure. Billions are being invested in crushing plants, railways, and port facilities. Across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, new processing hubs are under construction. These aren't short-term upgrades. They're long-term commitments designed to double Canada's crushing capacity within the decade. Rail networks are also being expanded to handle the flow. Grain elevators are modernizing, and export terminals on the Pacific Coast are preparing for higher throughput. At the corporate level, consolidation is reshaping the industry. Regulators forced significant concessions, including infrastructure investments and protections for farmers, ensuring that the new corporate landscape doesn't reduce competition. These developments matter beyond agriculture. They anchor Canada's canola pivot as permanent. Infrastructure is more than steel and concrete. It's the foundation of a new transatlantic alliance built on oil seeds. Historically, the U.S. was Canada's natural outlet for agricultural exports. Shared borders and integrated logistics made American buyers the default market. But that automatic alignment is eroding. Buy American rules have tightened access, and biofuel credits now exclude much of Canada's canola oil. Instead of deepening integration, Washington has created friction. As a result, Canadian exporters are redirecting flows eastward. Europe's demand surge makes this possible, but the political calculus is equally important. Each ton shipped across the Atlantic reduces Ottawa's dependence on Washington's policies. The U.S., once the gatekeeper of Canadian agriculture, is becoming just one option among many. This shift also creates competition. American farmers now face Canadian canola as a rival in global vegetable oil markets. The symbolism matters. Canola is no longer just an export commodity. It's a diplomatic tool. By embedding itself in Europe's food and energy systems, Canada is gaining leverage in other areas of policy. For Canada, this diversification is strategic insurance. Over-reliance on either China or the U.S. left Ottawa exposed to sudden disruptions. Europe offers balance. This leverage also matters domestically. Farmers, who bore the brunt of Chinese tariffs, now see more stable demand. For Europe, the partnership provides security. Canadian canola reduces dependence on volatile suppliers, from Ukraine to palm oil exporters in Southeast Asia. Taken together, these moves elevate canola from crop to currency. Markets are paying attention. Canola isn't just a farmer's crop anymore, it's an asset class. Investment funds are pouring into new crushing facilities, rail upgrades, and renewable diesel plants. Private equity is eyeing opportunities in biofuel supply chains tied directly to Canadian canola. The merger of agribusiness giants is also reshaping investment patterns. With fewer but larger players controlling exports, capital flows are concentrating on infrastructure projects with guaranteed throughput. Renewable energy companies, too, are jumping in. Partnerships between oil majors and agricultural processors are turning canola into fuel at industrial scale. For farmers, this capital inflow creates opportunities. The financialization of canola also has global implications. Futures contracts on canola are becoming indicators of both food and fuel markets. Canola's pivot to Europe is about more than agriculture. It's about how nations adapt to a fractured world economy. Canada's response to Chinese tariffs and U.S. restrictions has turned a setback into a strategy. By hardwiring canola into Europe's food and energy systems, Ottawa has diversified its economy, strengthened its diplomacy, and reduced its vulnerability. The move also highlights the growing overlap between sectors. Food becomes fuel, agriculture becomes energy, trade becomes geopolitics. Canola is no longer a yellow flower on the prairies. It's a symbol of how commodities evolve into power assets when global conditions demand it. For Europe, the partnership is equally significant. The future may even expand this partnership beyond canola. In a volatile world, that's the real message. Canada's canola shift to Europe is not just about crops, it's about sovereignty. And sovereignty, once secured in food and energy, becomes the foundation of influence in every other sphere. If you found this breakdown valuable, watch our next video. It connects directly to what's unfolding. And don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us decode these global shifts without compromise. Let us know in the comments. Is this simply diversification or the start of agricultural geopolitics? Either way, the world is watching. This was Canada's canola shift to Europe and why the US can't stop it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.